Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Big League Breakdowns. Today, we are going to discuss the MLB lifting bans on ineligible players. My name is Tyler. Joining me today is the full cast of characters: Will, John, and Bobby. As always, it's been a little bit for us, a little bit of a
Eh,
hiatus, but we are
I don't know
back,
what you're talking about.
and
It's only been a week
and another
and
week.
change.
And
And then another week.
change might be 2 weeks,
And
but who
change.
knows?
Yeah.
But yes, we are back after some busyness. And here to discuss some baseball. And again, big news coming out of the MLB. We are recording this on May 14th, but yesterday, the MLB taking away permanent bans for players like Pete Rose, Shoeless Joe Jackson, after death, saying that basically death is the end of their sentence, quote unquote, and then they are now eligible for things like the Hall of Fame, which is definitely going to be a point of contention, especially for Pete Rose, going forward, as he's now eligible. So I guess I just want to get your first reactions off of this, guys. I think that you know Pete Rose had passed, I believe, in September of 2024, and there was a lot of discussion then. I even think we talked about it of like should he be in the Hall of Fame, um, and not just him, but other players that have faced these penalties. Will, I go to you first. Like, what is your instant reaction to this ruling?
About damn time. I mean, ever since MLB started taking the revenue from the gambling sponsorships, it always felt like a hypocrisy to keep out Pete Rose because of the gambling situation. So, I mean, if it takes the man to die to figure it out, I guess here we are. But it's fitting. Your lifetime ban is over when you're dead. Yeah, thanks. I mean, I feel like everyone could have said that one. So we'll see what happens. But I do think this is the right decision.
John, what about you?
This might be one of Rob Manfred's best moves, in all honesty. For not just for Pete Rose, but for guys like Shoeless Joe Jackson, who is clearly a Hall of Famer, who has a career batting average of 356 and a career on base percentage of 423. I mean, look, here's the reality of this. Rob Manfred actually got one right, and I think that these lifetime bans were honestly, as Will said, completely ridiculous as soon as sports books were allowed into ballparks.
It is interesting, that point of it, because it is like very hypocritical. I thought the terminology that he used was interesting in his statement. I'm paraphrasing, but basically it was like, the whole point of permanently ineligible is to protect individuals who pose a risk to the game, which is interesting, and obviously after somebody passes, they're no longer a risk. And that was kind of the big point of, all right, well, yeah, now it's a lifetime ban. You've served your sentence. Now, you can have that, or your family, I guess, can have that royalty of your name being in to the Hall of Fame or back into the record books or whatever the case may be. And yeah, I think it's the timing of this is definitely interesting just because again Pete Rose died a little more than what 7 8 months ago. So um there was definitely a conversation then. He had, you know, I don't think he really expected it, it seemed like, and now he's got it. So again, he is not able to physically, be a part of that, but I guess his name isn't quote unquote tarnished in the sense of MLB's like, hey, we're trying to get this guy out of everything, blah blah blah. Obviously, there's still you can have your opinions on him. Um, still. But regardless, I think, now the MLB has, they recognize Pete Rose as the all-time hits leader, and he will definitely be in the Hall of Fame. And I was reading too, and this is I guess, my lack of Hall of Fame knowledge, but I didn't realize like they kind of go in cycles of how they draft, like how they elect inductees, so it's like they take like
You're talking Golden
errors.
Era committees.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I didn't realize that. So like I think it's not till 2028 he would be
Okay.
2027.
I
2027.
saw 2027, but does 2027 mean that it would be that Hall of Fame class? So it's technically 26 when the vote would happen, or it's 2027 vote, which
They're
means he would be in
not.
the
They're
28
not
It's
scheduled
class.
to
2027
meet
vote.
Meet
until
until
2027.
27. All right, so then
Yes.
yeah, it's 27, 28, meaning he would be voted in 27, but it would be
I
class of
mean,
28.
Potentially.
yeah, but I
Yes,
mean,
potentially.
I that's the thing now is like I don't. Is there even a doubt that he's?
Yes.
Yes.
Now here, the doubt is not stats related.
As a
Now
bond.
that is out the that is now that the band's lifted, no brainer based on the stats. He is a first ballot Hall of Famer. But there's much more to Pete Rose than just his stats. Yes, there was the whole ban and whatnot, and there will probably be people that still don't think he should be on in the Hall of Fame because of the gambling situation, even though he's no longer banned for it. But there's a whole lot of other misconduct things he did and was accused of, and then that's going to play a huge factor. Do I think I mean, what is the situation with the Golden Airs? Because I couldn't remember. Is it like you can do it for as long as they feel like it and then vote you in, or is it kind of like the same situation where like
I didn't see any restrictions where like you had appearance limits on how many
Right.
times you could
You
appear
have to
up
get
for
a
vote on the Golden Era.
you have to get a certain amount of votes to continue to be eligible.
for the
You have
Golden
to
Era
You can
get
keep
too?
12
going.
out of 16.
Even in Golden
No,
Era?
that's just the get in.
Well,
That's
so
we're just talking about staying around, kind
yeah,
of like the
Oh.
Hall of Fame
Yeah.
ballot.
yeah. I think it's and then I think it's like less than if it's less than four twice or something, then you're ineligible for life.
Right.
I forget, but
Well, okay. With that, regardless, because I don't think that's harsh enough in this situation. I do think he will get it. I'm not sold it will happen first ballot, but given the way people's thoughts are, I feel like in general, and I mean, even when it came with steroid era players over time, it softened up. I feel like you're probably gonna have people more our age or within 15 years, 20 years older than us that are probably more in favor of him than players that have been around for a while. So if he doesn't make it right away and there is some biases based on his misconduct or beliefs that the 16 people that are on the committee believe, I think within X amount of years that enough personnel will shift and he'll be in.
yeah, I mean,
Oh.
I think it's a moral conundrum you're in because you know the verbiage of this again, like I said, it's like all right, well he passed, so now like he served his sentence, but it doesn't still take away from the fact that he did potentially do. I mean, there's stuff we obviously know he did. There's stuff that potentially he did. And I guess that moral part of it. So it's kind of weird because it's like it feels like the MLB is like, all right, we can kind of give a guy like him a pass now because he can't hurt us anymore. But at the same time, it's like you're
Hurt.
almost kind of setting a precedent, I guess, in a way. Like that would be
Hold
my
on,
only.
hold on. They already set this precedent by voting in Ty Cobb.
Yeah.
So that argument of Pete Rose is a scumbag
Based on
and
conduct.
not a great guy, you know, then Ty Cobb should not be in the Hall of
Yeah,
Fame.
you're right.
There's a difference between
But-
beating the
but-
crap out of people repeatedly and sexual misconduct.
Well, I was gonna say,
Well-
plus,
That's the big
plus
barrier.
you gotta remember, like Ty Cobb's situation is a little bit different considering Pete Rose has like a lot more strikes on his record. Like he kind of broke the golden rule of things that you're not supposed to do as a professional athlete,
Which-
and that's bet on the games you're
Or a
part of.
human being.
And
Which
he
the
also
baseball
has sexual
commissioner
misconduct
just said
allegations.
doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah,
Right, and
that's
I'll
not-
get into that
well,
in a
that's not
bit
what he
because
said.
I have feelings about that. But yeah, no, I mean, from a moral standpoint, based on gambling, I feel like because it's not been proven that he gambled against the Reds, and he's even said he's gambled always for his team to win. At this point, I'm like, I throw out the moral argument about it. He gambled because he thought his team could win, and they didn't always win. But I mean, that given the way sports betting is such a huge part of the world nowadays and will be even bigger in the future, that's not an argument. Everything now to me is about his character.
Yeah, well, and I guess let's transition that into the Black Sox scandal. And John, I know you like love talking about this, so I'll go to
I
you
just love
for
baseball
this.
history, my guy.
No, you do. But like, all right, so like, for instance, so the two big names, of course, were Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe Jackson. But I know there is a bunch of other players from that team that are also eligible
Here,
now.
they're
So
eligible, but here's the problem: not all of them had Hall of Fame careers.
right,
The
Yeah, they're not
main
all gonna make
one
it.
besides, well, yeah, the main one besides Shoeless Joe Jackson that you could have an argument for is Eddie Seacott, and I'm not a fan of this one just because I don't like him as a person, considering of him being the linchpin essentially.
well,
Um,
that's what I was gonna ask, right? So like,
but
because the
so I could throw out his stats a little bit. He has a career 2.38 ERA. He had basically a full career when he was banned. He was 36. He started at the age of 21. So you can do the math there. I'm not going to because math ain't mathin' right now. Um, his
Yeah,
his
16-year career.
his career WAR is 57.9, which that's pretty good. And then as far as earned runs against him, 853 um, earned runs. So the thing, so you can make the argument there for him. Now I want to go to Shoeless Joe Jackson, who also had a relatively full career. Um, at least by Hall of Fame standards, because you have to have played 10 years in order to be eligible. So guys like Buck Weaver is not eligible strictly on the fact that he did not play 10 years, I believe. So Shoeless Joe Jackson has a, that's it. That's value batting. My bad. Uh, has a career 356 batting average. Uh, career on base percentage 423, a career OPS of 517. Played in the show for 13 years. You know, you can say what you want of the series in general, but his career um was relatively, how do I put this?
productive.
Superstar like, yeah,
Okay,
superstar
yeah.
like for the time. You could say that he influenced Babe Ruth because Ruth even came out and said that he modeled his swing off of Shoeless Joe Jackson. Whether or not that's 100% true, who knows? That truth died with both of them. But the reality of the situation is, and I was right, Buck Weaver did not play 10 years. He played 9, which sucks, but whatever.
Mm.
The point is, both these guys you can make arguments for as far as being in the Hall of Fame. Eddie Seacott, not necessarily the best character, I believe. Shoeless Joe Jackson, though, there really wasn't an issue other than the Black Sox scandal. In fact, a lot of people, you could even make the argument, and a lot of people do make the argument, he probably didn't even know what he was agreeing to because
He was acquitted in court,
yes, he was
so
acquitted. Well, they
he
were all
wasn't
acquitted
guilty.
technically. Um, but he was illiterate. He did not have any schooling past, I believe, elementary. Uh, or actually, I don't even think he had any schooling whatsoever because he didn't even know how to write his name. When he signed the papers, he just wrote an X.
Mm.
Uh, so you can make an argument of ignorance in his case. Whereas Eddie Seacott and Pete Rose, you can make an argument against them more so than you can make an argument for them in terms of character.
Yeah.
I
So
think
my
anyone in the Black Sox
Well,
scandal that threw it is automatically not there. No one's going to
can
vote
I
for them, and that's that.
can
It's
I
Shoeless Show's different because everyone believes that he really wasn't for it. He may have known about it, but he didn't throw in or really do anything.
can I ask a question because I'm hearing you guys give your points and I kind of want to get a baseline of something here. Do you guys not think that gambling on games is a career ending, career staining thing anymore?
I was going to actually bring this very question up because, or bring up this point. You can make the argument gambling is worse than steroids because steroids while you are cheating to help your performance, which in turn helps your team win.
It depends on the gambling situation. I'm going to start to kind of bridge it a little bit slowly to the talking point I told you about Tyler, about my thoughts with what MLB should do now regarding penalties for gambling.
Yeah.
Personally, in
Sorry, guys.
short, this is just quickly to answer Bobby's question. Personally, in short, because gambling is such a thing and baseball is for it, it's a very complicated slope. I personally don't have an issue if you're going to gamble on your team winning and that's purely it. I don't think it's really, I mean, any way that you gamble that could affect the outcome, which really I can think of is against you. Unless you're saying something specific like I'm going to strike out X amount of times this game or get X amount of hits. But if it's something as simple as our team's going to win and I bet we are, there's nothing you can literally do other than throwing your team. And if you throw it, then I think you should be absolutely banned for life. But if you're gambling in support of your team, I don't have an issue.
I mean, but the problem is there is like is something I always found interesting. So like I do think that for the most part, the account of Pete Rose betting on his team to win seems mostly accurate, but there was always kind of a bit of a but, it seems like, in all the investigations that kind of led up to that conclusion, where there's always the possibility that that's not the whole truth, but we're never going to know if that's true. And we're certainly never going to know what happened in 1919. So, you know, I guess
we do
my
know
point
what happened.
is that like, I don't like, personally, just coming from me, is like, I don't want any player, if you are involved, umpire, player, if you're in a game at all, I don't want you betting on anything related to it, whether you're winning or losing. Now, certainly the ethics on whether you're betting for on your team to win versus your team to lose is very different, and I acknowledge that, but I don't think it's one of those, I feel like it's a give an inch, take a mile situations where if you kind of, let's say this isn't going to happen, but let's say tomorrow Rob Manfred's like, yeah, you can bet on baseball as long as it's your own team and it's positive.
Right. And I feel like that's going to get really
Like,
icky when it comes to the waters. Like, even though with what I just said, I feel like there's going to be a lot of like, well, a player can do this, but then gets away with this. But there's a lot of really fine line gray area stuff that I still feel like in the end is going to be it's too much, and then, so it should just stay banned. But I do feel like, I don't know, I think it's just, I guess for me, because baseball is so for gambling, I feel like they should change the rules slightly pertaining to what happens when you're caught. It's pretty straightforward though in my mind. I'm, like I said earlier, if you're caught gambling and it's to basically throw a game or throw your performance in any way, so like the Black Sox game, or like saying I'm going to strike out 4 times a game or whatever, then you're banned for life. Like, keep it straightforward. That's what it is. If you're caught gambling in like a Pete Rose situation where you're said to have gambled for like your team to win, you shouldn't have done that, but that's all it was. I feel like the suspension should follow what they do for steroids.
Well, I mean,
which is the first is an 81 game, second's 162, and then third time it's a lifetime ban.
We've seen other leagues do that. The NFL has done that. They had a couple year bans a couple 1 year bans for players who were caught gambling and were breaking whatever the gambling policy was under the NFL. I guess though, I want to backtrack to P-Rose real quick, because this is something too that I feel like is interesting. Is something that was worth noting as I was kind of just rereading the history of the whole situation, was that like it wasn't even just that. Apparently he's had multiple chances to at least give himself a better opportunity, and he didn't. He stayed gambling, whether we agree that was I mean, look, he was banned from baseball. What else are you gonna do with your time, I guess? But at the same time, it's like he kind of got the ultimatum. It's like, okay, you say you want this so much, you've been, you know, applying for reinstatement for years now, for decades, since the ban basically happened, but you're not changing your attitude. At what point is it kind of like, well, he had multiple chances and didn't do it, so does he still deserve the vote now?
And I would say yes, because MLB is for bringing in sports betting. The fact that MLB has brought in sports betting, to me, completely changes the argument 100%, especially after the fact, Pete Rose. Sports betting.
this is kind of little bit off topic, but also on topic. So, spoilers for last week's episode of The Simpsons. In that episode, there is they brought in a foreign.
Never heard a spoiler alert for
foreign-
The Simpsons in my life.
They brought in a foreign player to play for the Springfield Isotopes, and he has a gambling scandal. And Mo asks him, "Why would you? What would even give you the idea that you should be gambling on sports?" And then it cuts away to 10 different gambling ads within the stadium. So that it's interesting that you say that, Will, because it's 100% accurate. It's true. Like, how can you say a guy like Pete Rose does not belong in the Hall of Fame or is banned from baseball when you are in bed with gamblers because they give you money? And
But
we
they're not.
we had
but,
been
but
saying
but
this.
the advertisements isn't for players though, and I believe I said
You
this
could
last
say
time.
it's not for players, but
But it
if
is-
you're
I mean, but it
making
isn't.
money, okay.
because you're making
wait a
money
minute.
off
Wait a minute.
fans. What's the
Wait a
difference
minute.
between that and
Wait.
apparel sales?
Hold on. Wait a minute now.
Yeah.
They advertise soda, right? Does that
Sure.
mean the soda isn't for players in that sense?
I mean, if you're an athlete, you probably don't want to be drinking soda. You probably want to be drinking water.
Okay. Well, then I guess whoever drinks soda in baseball should be banned.
That's a horrific comparison. And you know that. You know that's incredibly disingenuous to even suggest that that's what I'm saying. Gambling is an addiction.
Yes, I
It's a
understand.
vice, and I can acknowledge both that it's a bad thing for a lot of people who have addictive personalities and they probably shouldn't get to, but there's also an expected level of discipline if you're going to be a professional athlete. And it's not like sports gambling's new. The only difference between sports gambling then and then the Black Sox days was that the league recognizes it and welcomes it as part of its income, but it's not making more money off of the players by doing so. It's making more money off of the fans at the end of the day, not the players. They're just using the players' likeness like they would for anything else. That's the only difference. And in the dead ball era, I mean, gambling was around. They were never going to stop it, even though they definitely tried. And that's why it was still profitable enough and enticing enough for the Black Sox scandal to even happen. The only difference now is we have these stupid fucking computers in our pocket that make it much, much, much easier to do. I can acknowledge that too. But there was always this kind of level of discipline you were expecting the athletes to have, even though the new sports gambling is around. It's not like sports gambling is this brand new thing. It's just easier now. That's the difference.
I want to go back to the question that I tried to pose like 15 minutes ago.
Alright.
Before you do that, I just looked up the odds of Pete Rose and Joe Jackson
No,
getting
you can't
elected in the Hall
interrupt
of
Tyler.
Fame.
He's gonna throw you
See,
off
that's
the bridge.
messed up. That's messed up that they have odds for getting into the Hall of Fame for guys that
Fucking-
got
it's hilarious.
No, the messed up with thing would be is here are the odds of him getting in prior to death, and then here's the odds now that he's after.
Do you want the odds?
No.
I don't care enough. So my question is this: so like, it in a way, it almost sounds like again they're forgiving him. I guess maybe that's not true. I was gonna say I guess they're forgiving him because now he passed, but I guess that's not true.
No longer a person
Yeah,
no
they
longer with us could not represent
Right.
a threat to the integrity of
Right.
the game.
Because my question was going to be, all right, so a guy like Shoeless Joe Jackson, like who there is this documentation that he, probably didn't do it or didn't know about it. Also, his stats in the World Series where he was balling out. Should he get the same treatment for the Hall of Fame as somebody like Rose or some other guy on that team, on that Black Sox team who knowingly did something wrong? Like, I guess that's my question with it.
Well,
like,
and that's been the
yeah,
argument
caught
for
in the
years.
crossfire.
It's what they did to Weaver.
Yeah,
Weaver was the guilty by association.
it's just like, he like Rose again knowingly did this stuff, knowing that he couldn't, he was not allowed to do it, and it's like, again, I guess they're not forgiving him per se, but it's kind of like a weird thing now. I don't know.
All right, in short, this is really what it is in the end. Rob Manfred's taking the blame out of his hands now.
Yeah,
we can
well,
say he's right or not,
Yeah.
but all he's doing in the
Yeah.
end is saying, I'm not the one that's going to tell you Pete Rose can't be in the Hall of Fame. It's going to be these voters. That's literally
Yeah,
all this
he's
is in
fitting
the
into
end.
the Hall of Fame. Yep.
He's basically like, it's no longer my responsibility. have at it. But people can still vote against him if they disapprove of X, Y, and Z.
You know
So,
what? And here's why I'm pissed at Rob Manfred. He just took away one of the evergreen pieces of content for baseball media. That like we can't every 2 years bring this back up anymore because it's gonna get settled in 2027. We only have one more go at this.
Yeah,
Like
true.
at a certain point, unless I guess if he doesn't get on the
I was
ballot
about
for
to
some reason.
say,
But
ooh, the odds just changed for Pete Rose getting in the Hall of Fame.
What is
you
wrong
keep
with
your
people?
trap shut, Travers. Pull the
Oh,
numbers out of
God.
you.
It's minus
No numbers.
500, by the way, for Pete Rose
No
getting in the
numbers.
Hall of Fame, according to bookies.com.
Interesting.
Joe
Will,
Jackson is minus 110.
what was your did you have anything else to add with like the future of where this is going?
No.
Okay, good. Well, that's good to know. You know what? When you were talking about it, I was thinking, the the Pirates player. Now I'm forgetting his name. Tuca Pita
Um,
Marcano.
yeah,
Because
Tuca.
he got a lifetime ban, but I believe the couple guys that were in the minors that were betting on their major league teams only got 1 year bans. I think that was the case. So
Yeah.
it's not unprecedented in the sport that like, you're talking about like, depending on what the problem is, the lines there are so, it's such a fine line, right? Of like, oh, I was only betting on my team. How can you prove that,
Well,
you
let's be
know,
honest. What's gonna happen? I'm not saying I have any idea who it's gonna be, but what's gonna happen is this is gonna kind of stay as it is for a while until the wrong person gambles. And by wrong person, I mean a big enough name where baseball is gonna have to decide: do I ban said player, or the fact that they are gonna be out of the game is gonna hurt the money making / fan experience, and then they slightly
almost
change
had
the
it.
rules so
We
that
were this
right.
close.
Shohei's
So
probably
that
going,
happens.
damn, I didn't
So
need to
that
give him
it's
the
gonna
fall.
happen. That's the future,
It's
is
gonna
what it's gonna
happen.
be.
It's gonna
Baseball's
happen.
gonna be stagnant now. They're gonna be happy with what they did, but something's gonna happen in the future. It might happen in the next 10 years, the way gambling is taking off in general with sports betting, and it's everywhere. So it's like, who knows who it's gonna be, but the right it's gonna be because the right person got caught and they don't want to get rid of them.
Yeah,
I will say
good
this
point.
because I was kind of going heavy into the whole there should be a little bit of personal discipline out of the players. I do hope, since the MLB is, as we're calling it, in bed with gambling like that, that they would offer resources for players who might end up making it an addiction. If they do at least that much, I feel like that's
They're gonna offer the phone number and walk away. They're gonna do the bare minimum.
that's you know what I'm not that's what
Hey,
I'm just
while we
saying.
were talking about this, they literally put betting odds of the Phillies game on the screen, and of course, underneath the betting odds is the call this number if you
1-800
have
gambler. Yep.
right. That's MLB's thing. Here's their card.
Yeah.
We did what we need to do.
Can't be held liable.
Speaking of which, if you have a gambling addiction, please call 1-800
actually
gambler.
do use that number.
Yeah,
I like it.
actually
Bobby, you
use
should
it.
have put it in the lower third.
Yeah,
my
Bobby,
fault.
producer, get on it.
Yeah,
I bet it.
I mean, look, I think if Bob is right. Our one source of content we come back to. So, all this time, and again, like now that there's a whole conversation can be had about steroid users and stuff like that. I
I
guess,
did want to
but
dig into that. I did want to dig into
I
that
wanted to
because,
ask that question.
Well, I read David, how do you say his name? Schoenfield, I think is how you say his name.
Yeah.
On ESPN. So he wrote kind of a thing, just kind of what it means for a bunch of other situations, and he brought up Bonds and Clemens. And
Yeah.
something he mentioned was that this, just because Pete Rose and Joe Jackson got their ban lifted, doesn't mean that they're an immediate shoo-in, because Bonds and Clemens are both still struggling to even get on these ballots because they only got 4 votes in 2023. So and the way David Schoenfield kind of summarizes it at the end is that because that panel for the Hall of Fame is made of former players, and that this whole you can't bet on the game is like kind of the golden rule, that they may not be as quick to get him in as a lot of fans of baseball would like them to.
Yeah.
I mean,
I said I was skeptical he'd be a first ballot. I'm a little more forgiving that Shoeless Joe would be a first ballot, but I'm not sold on Pete Rose.
I mean, my whole thing is like Pete Rose has also been respected by the MLB community for a long time, at least until the
Well,
sexual
until
assault allegations
Phillies
to-
basically
hold
get
on, hold
Phillies
on.
and the Reds are the two teams that gave him open windows. And for the Phillies, every time they tried to do something good, there was the Wall of Fame night. Then the sexual allegations came out, so they got rid of that. And then they brought him to the 1980 reunion day or whatever it was. And they put him on the broadcast, and boy, that was not the right thing to do.
Yeah, and
so,
also let's call a spade here. Even before all that, he was always a dick. Can we not, like, he was respected for what he did. And yes, for the most part, I am an art from the artist type person. He was an incredible baseball player, but holy shit, he was never a good human whenever he had an opportunity to either A, defend himself, or B, just be a good person for the game of baseball. He just never
like
was
Ty
that.
Cobb.
Yeah, it's
like
funny
Ty
how
Cobb.
this all comes back.
Actually, Ty Cobb donated what $100,000 at the time to a hospital to have it built.
I mean,
His
shit,
hometown.
in that case.
Yeah, so
I'm just
charitable.
saying there was a redeeming quality in that shit sandwich. Okay,
Yeah, that's why I said I think I do kind of view the.
Doesn't
We
just
shouldn't
because there's some
compare.
sprinkles on the shit sandwich doesn't mean it doesn't taste like shit anymore.
Yeah, I was gonna say I feel like Pete Rose's situation is like a double decker, whereas Ty Cobb's you kind of it's the old reliable single patty. You know what you're getting out of it. You know, there's too many layers
It's a
to what
salted
Pete
single
Rose has
patty.
going on.
It's
It
a
is.
salted single patty, and Pete Rose has the special sauce. Let's see what you think about it.
Good lord.
Okay, with that, we will wrap it up here. Definitely interesting conversations to be had. I did like the point you brought up, Will, though. It's like, yeah, Manfred, I don't know if it was Will or Bobby now, but Manfred, it's not in my hands anymore. Not in my hands anymore.
Yep.
When
Give
you
it
think
to
about it, that's a
somebody
very
else.
Rob Manfred thing to do.
Yeah, that is. That I really didn't
least-
think about that
He
until
did the
now.
right thing, but let's be honest.
Yeah.
He's just
By the way, we
giving
didn't say
himself
this.
out of any trouble.
We didn't say this yet. I forget who I was listening to. Someone on Sports Center. Someone said that Trump really pushed this along. Which, God, I really
Yeah,
hope
he was
that's
calling
true.
Trump about this.
I know. He basically pardoned Rose, which for
Mhm.
what? And like, I
They have
don't
a
even
lot
know
in
what he was being
common.
pardoned for. But no, but the difference is
More than just wearing the color red?
Never mind.
Yeah,
But I
I was
don't
gonna
know.
say.
Yeah, I know Trump was definitely called, and apparently he was called after this decision was made too. So I
Yes.
guess he did have something to do with it. So that's a little more annoying, but whatever.
Good God.
Interesting.
Keep that man out of baseball. I like to enjoy something, not
Yeah.
seeing his face
Yeah,
somewhere.
keep him at college football crowds because last time he went to one, he was getting
The
booed out of the
Army
stadium.
Navy game.
Dude, oh my god, that was great. Anyway, I'll end with that.
Anyway, yes. If you want to follow us on Twitter at BL_breakdowns, big league breakdowns everywhere else. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you like the content. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and we will see you next time.
Wear your seatbelt.